You are born into this world, and you'll be here for a certain number of years. Then you'll leave. That is the truth for every single one of us. What you choose to do with the time between your birth and your death is what makes up your life. You need to stop and ask yourself very often, what do I want to do with this time I've been given between my birth and my death? You're going to die one day. Whether you live to 70, 80, 90, or even 100 years old. Those are just numbers. They don't mean much on their own. The time you have to live is limited. So not asking yourself, what do I truly want to do with my time? Doesn't make sense. This is your life, not your parents' life, not your friend's life, not anyone else's. It's your time to live. Understand that. Really take it in. We often avoid this question because we're afraid. Afraid from the time we're born until the time we die. People may say, I'm not scared. I go to the gym. I have a gun for protection. But why do they carry a gun or practice self-defense? Because there's fear underneath. We think these things will keep us safe from whatever we fear. But fear is still there, deep down. If it's not a fear of physical harm, it's often a psychological fear. I'm not trying to judge you. I'm asking you to be honest. You likely feel psychological fears. Fear of being rejected, fear of someone leaving you, fear of embarrassing yourself, fear of something as small as spilling food on yourself. You may worry about the future, the weather, or even a possible disaster. These fears are there, whether you realize it or not. A wise person recognizes this. They see that fear is present now, not just at the end. It's in the way we build our lives, trying to create barriers around us to avoid feeling this fear. We shape our lives, control our surroundings, and adjust how we act so we don't have to confront what scares us. Maybe you want people to like you. Why? Because it makes you feel safe, less afraid. If someone loves you, you might feel a sense of security. But what are you really asking for? You're hoping that person won't do anything to make you feel afraid or unsafe. This need for security comes from a basic fear that all living creatures share. Just like a deer runs away when it feels threatened, humans are wired to avoid anything that feels dangerous. The survival instinct humans have has changed over time. It's not just about keeping yourself safe from physical harm anymore. It's also about guarding yourself from emotional and mental hurt. This fear goes deep, right into your mind. Think about it. How often do you feel the need to defend yourself? And I don't mean physically with fists or weapons. I mean, how often do you jump to protect yourself emotionally? Almost all the time. Someone makes a remark about you, and you feel the need to explain yourself. You hear a rumor, and you're quick to defend your character. Why would someone think that? I didn't do anything wrong. This reaction isn't about physical safety. It's about protecting your ego, that sense of self. This fear runs incredibly deep. Our whole idea of self, our ego, is shaped not by confidence, but by fear. It's built out of a fear of rejection, of being hurt, of not being accepted. Imagine being in a relationship where someone threatens to leave. Your response might be, no, please, I can change. I'll be whoever you need me to be. That's fear talking. You're willing to reshape yourself to keep others happy, to avoid feeling rejected or alone. Over time, this creates a version of you that's built on what others think, on their approval or disapproval. Just like some people build houses, you're constantly constructing this version of yourself based on how others react to you. If someone likes you, you feel safe. If they criticize you, you feel threatened, and you adapt to avoid the pain. Fear of rejection and pain becomes the center of this ego. It's like a core inside you, constantly shaping how you think and act. Why? Because as a conscious being in this body, with all these senses and feelings, the world can be overwhelming. There's so much happening, and it can be a lot to handle, so you create this version of yourself to feel in control, to protect yourself from feeling scared. Are you handling things in your life because of fear? Think about it. Fear shapes your reactions. Whether it's to avoid criticism, keep a job, or hold on to a relationship. And then, there's the idea of positive thinking. We're told to think positively, which is good, but sometimes it's just a cover. We say, I'm not afraid. I've got everything I need to protect myself. I'm secure. But underneath, there's still that deep fear of losing what we have, or of being vulnerable. Fear is powerful, and it drives much of how we act and see ourselves. It's a big part of why we defend and shape ourselves the way we do. So, at some point, you start to understand that deep down, everything you're doing is about protecting yourself from the fear inside you. You know it's there, and you really don't want to face it or feel it. To avoid that fear, you put on a whole show. You dress a certain way, act a certain way, and maybe even change your appearance. You go through all these motions so that what you present to the world feels safe and accepted, and that keeps you from having to look too closely at what's really going on inside. You make commitments, like wedding vows, which promise for better or worse until death do us part. But how often do people actually live by that? With divorce rates as high as 50% in the USA, it seems like those vows really mean, I'll stay with you as long as I feel safe, loved, and accepted. But if that feeling goes away, I'm out. It's less about true, unconditional commitment and more about sticking around as long as certain needs are met. And then there's the issue of trust. You might think it's wonderful to trust someone because it's better than not trusting them. But real trust doesn't mean believing someone will do exactly what you want. Instead, real trust is more like, I trust that you will be who you are. But that's usually not the kind of trust people mean. They tend to mean, I trust you'll act the way I want, that you love me enough to avoid doing anything that would hurt me. It's almost like trust becomes a condition for love. As long as you don't hurt me, we're good. Then one day, you wake up and realize this fear is still there. And you have choices. You can either try to deal with it or keep finding ways to avoid it. For me, outside means something different than it does for most people. When you're sitting with yourself, truly witnessing what's happening, your thoughts and feelings are things you observe. They're outside of who you really are. But many people turn to their mind to rationalize and protect their emotions. They try to shape the outside world to line up with what they think they need to feel safe on the inside. Say you're a musician, and the crowd claps when you play well. The next time you're out there, you expect that applause. If the audience boos, it can feel like it's tearing down your self-image. That applause becomes part of what you use to protect yourself. Your whole self-concept, how you see yourself, comes from this need to feel safe. Even as kids, we look for stability. Mommy, Mommy, we call out, because we want that same person there to comfort us every night. We don't want random people. We want someone we can rely on because we're scared, uncertain, and clinging to a sense of security. Buddha talked about clinging, which is the way we reach out and hold on to things, hoping they define who we are. We grab onto things like, this is my mum, my spouse, my child, my job, my boss, my big win in 5th grade when I played Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. We even keep little mementos, like the old pamphlet from the play, as a way to remind ourselves of our identity. We do this because we don't feel okay just as we are. We feel like we need these things to tell us who we are. But here's the problem. When we put this constructed self out there, it's fragile. We depend on other people to accept it. And if they don't, everything can come crashing down. Have you ever felt like you were falling apart? Like nothing made sense, and you didn't know who you were? That's what happens when this false self-image we built gets rejected. It's terrifying because we created this idea of ourselves to protect us. And when it falls apart, we feel exposed and lost. The fear of this falling apart experience is proof that this self-image is built to protect us. And when it shatters, we feel like it's one of the worst things that could ever happen. This shows how much fear we're holding inside, even if we're not always aware of it. Now look at how truly great, wise beings live their lives. They wake up each morning with a sense of excitement and openness, like, hey, I'm here again. What's going to happen today? Could be anything. Maybe I'll get hired, or maybe I'll get fired. It might rain, it might be sunny. People might like me, or they might not. Some might be kind, and others might yell. They live without needing to protect themselves, ready for anything life throws at them. People often misunderstand what real spirituality is. They think it's about having a powerful ego, getting whatever they want, or having the freedom to do anything. But true freedom isn't about being free for yourself. It's about being free from yourself. What does that mean? Being free from yourself means you can handle reality as it is. You're not afraid of life. And even if fear comes up, you're not afraid of the fear. Fear is just a natural human emotion like any other. Animals have it, and it's part of how we're built. So, can we handle fear when it comes up? Yes, we can, because it's just fear. Can there be pain? Yes, things can hurt, but we don't have to let it break us. Imagine you're playing volleyball, and you try to block a shot, but end up with a bruise on your wrist. Do you quit? No, you keep playing, because you know you can handle a bit of pain. It's not about being tough or building a thick skin. Real strength comes from being so open that things can just move through you. It's like you have no skin rather than thick skin. Nothing sticks or needs to be defended. Having thick skin means you're strong enough to handle hard things, but you're still always protecting yourself. If you live that way, you're spending all your energy keeping up your defenses, so nothing can bother you. But if you're open enough, with no fear and no resistance, whatever happens can come and go without getting stuck. Think about the white lines painted on a road. They're there, you see them, but you don't obsess over them, have nightmares about them, or get worked up over them. They're just part of the scenery, things that exist. Can you live that way with everything in life, where things happen and you just let them pass through? Imagine loving someone with your whole heart, fully open, without putting up walls to protect yourself, even though you know they could leave, change, or something unexpected could happen. Can you still love them just as deeply? Even with that risk? That's a real challenge, because it means you've come to terms with fear. You know that if they leave or things change, it will hurt. And that's okay because it's just one of life's experiences. But if you've built your identity on relying on things like this person, this job, or even specific people around you to feel stable, then when things start falling apart, it can shake you deeply. That's a lesson though. When something crumbles, it's showing you that it wasn't real in the way you thought. It was like building a house on sand, just like Christ talked about. When he said, "Don't build your house on sand," he wasn't talking about actual houses. He was talking about the inner house you live in, the self-image you create. When you create this self-image based on things you just made up, like, "This is who I am because of this job," or "I'm important because of these people," you're building on sand. And if someone doesn't like it, you're ready to change to get their approval. But a truly wise person learns to let go of that need for protection. They don't go through life defending this fragile self-image. They're open, even if it's vulnerable. Think about how often we do this kind of protecting. Maybe someone says they'll call in an hour and they don't. Suddenly, you're worried, wondering where they are or why they didn't call. You trusted them to keep their word, and when they don't, it stirs up all this fear. Then you realize, wow, I'm sitting here full of fear. You've built this whole system inside yourself, full of expectations and emotions, hoping it will be strong enough to handle disappointments. But then you also start controlling everything around you, trying to get people to act a certain way, arranging things just so, because you want to feel secure. People even go as far as insuring everything, making plans upon plans, trying to secure everything they can. All of this effort is because of fear, and it ends up running our lives. But true spirituality is about learning to face that fear, not avoiding it. It's about living in a way that makes life feel like a continuous adventure, full of learning, growth, and yes, love, joy, and inspiration, all the time. Some people think that to feel joy, you have to know sadness, or to truly love, you have to feel loss. They call this duality. But that's not true. There's a place inside you that is always full of love, joy, inspiration, and boundless energy. You don't need opposites to feel those things. When you connect with that deeper part of yourself, you're in a constant state of happiness and fulfillment, regardless of what's happening around you. You might ask, what if something happens that the ego doesn't like? Actually, that's where the good stuff is. Think about the Olympics. What do athletes do there? They take on the hardest challenges, things most people wouldn't even try, and push themselves to do their absolute best. Why? Because they want to reach deep inside, find inspiration, and test their limits. That's a great way to live life, treating each experience between birth and death as an opportunity to become a better, stronger version of yourself. But are most people willing to live like that? Usually not. Why? Because to grow, you have to deal with all the tough stuff that's buried inside you, and that's uncomfortable. Instead of facing it, we spend most of our time trying to protect ourselves from it. Spirituality, however, is about a completely different mindset. It's saying, I'm not perfect yet. I have things within me that I still struggle with, and that's why I also struggle with you. It's not that we actually have problems with other people. The real problem is with what goes on inside of us when we're around them. For example, you might think, I'm afraid of what this person might say to me, so I avoid them. I'll even walk around the block to not see them. But why are you afraid? Someone who doesn't know that person isn't scared of them. Maybe it's because yesterday they said something you didn't like, and now you're holding on to that. We do this sort of thing all the time. So the spiritual path isn't about becoming so strong, rich, or powerful that you can control everyone around you. It's not about avoiding discomfort by controlling people and situations. Spirituality is about choosing not to control others. It's about saying, I don't want to have to change or manipulate you to make myself comfortable. Once you reach this point, you'll still interact with the world, but it'll be different. You won't interact just to protect yourself or to make sure everything goes the way you want. Instead, you'll interact from a place of openness and acceptance. At the core of it all, spirituality is saying, I want to be able to handle reality as it is. Yet so many people say, I want to meditate, chant mantras, travel to Tibet, or become a guru. But the true goal is simple, to be able to handle life exactly as it comes. You can definitely do things like meditate, go on spiritual retreats, or visit sacred places. They're enjoyable experiences, and they have their benefits. But at the heart of it all, true spirituality is about one thing: being able to handle reality. It's about waking up every day with the confidence that no matter what life brings your way, you'll be okay. Imagine if you could truly look at life this way. You'd be ready to face anything without fear of being hurt or let down. Real love only comes when you're not afraid of pain. Sure, you might experience some conditional love when things are going well and people act just as you'd like. But if you're afraid of getting hurt, you'll never get to experience true, deep love. Real love isn't about what others do. It comes from inside of you. It's about staying open no matter what. And yes, there's always some fear inside us. But the goal isn't to control people or situations to avoid feeling that fear. Real growth comes from learning how to let go of fear so you can truly experience love. It's like trading fear for love. Imagine that. Who wouldn't want to make that trade? Yet so often, we let fear take away our ability to feel love. So, here's the big choice. Do you want to live a life full of love, or do you want to live in fear? It's a decision only you can make. Do you want to spend your life protecting yourself from this fear that you refuse to face? Or do you want a life that's inspired, filled with love, and resilient no matter what happens? Each of us has the potential to reach that state of inner peace and love. But here's the truth most people don't tell you. Many of us don't even try to reach that place. We use up our energy, our thoughts, our emotions, our time, and even our money, all trying to protect ourselves from our fears. We might not even admit we're scared because we keep ourselves so far removed from it. It's like this fear is always hiding under the surface. I need a secure job, a contract that guarantees my future, and a backup plan if things don't work out. But if we're honest, all of this comes down to fear. Why else would we need so many layers of security if we weren't afraid? So, the question remains, are you going to keep building walls to protect yourself from this fear, or are you ready to let it go and choose love, openness, and true freedom? You are living your life based on fear, but you're not really seeing it that way. Instead, you're focusing on success as avoiding what scares you. You think you're successful if you've managed to dodge your fears, if you have relationships that are smooth and don't trigger you, and if you've created an environment where everything feels safe. To you, that feels like success. I don't have to be afraid. I trust completely, and I'm comfortable. But that's not true success, because it only lasts as long as you can keep it all together. Deep down, you know you have to keep protecting this success every day. That's where stress and worry come in. Think about it. What is stress? What is worry? It's the effort to constantly guard yourself from things that could disrupt that comfort zone. Look at some of the richest people, politicians, and public figures. Do they get to sleep peacefully every night? Not at all. They're also struggling to hold on to their idea of success. It's just an endless game of protection, of avoiding fear by feeling in control. But the truth is, you're just afraid, like everyone else. So, you wake up one day and ask yourself, what am I going to do with my life between now and when I die? And maybe you realize, I'm not going to spend it running from fear. Why would you want to spend a lifetime holding on to fear inside and then trying to structure your entire life to keep it at bay? You're not really protecting yourself from other people or the outside world. You're protecting yourself from the feelings these things might trigger in you. A great saint named Ma Shakti. She was a quiet, peaceful, deeply spiritual woman. One day, she leaned over and said, "Don't you just love when they yell at you? There's so much energy in it." And she meant it. She didn't get defensive or upset when someone raised their voice. She just took in that energy and turned it into joy. That was her strength. We all have the ability to turn anything that comes our way into something uplifting, even if it doesn't feel possible right now. Right now, it might seem impossible because you've spent your whole life building up a system to protect yourself from fear. But there is another way. You can learn to work with that fear instead of letting it rule you. Imagine waking up every day and just being excited for what's in front of you. Excited to brush your teeth. Excited for breakfast. Excited for work, for family, for quiet moments, for chaos. Just excited for life itself. You're not here to spend your time protecting yourself from things that might upset you. You're here to live fully, to see this world for a few short years and make the most of it. To do that, you have to be willing to face your fears and learn to sit with them instead of letting them control you. And no, you don't have to get rid of fear completely. The goal isn't to eliminate it, but to become comfortable with it, so it no longer stops you from living. To understand this way of thinking, imagine that even though being sick is no fun, you can still feel okay inside. Plenty of people go through illness and still live beautifully. Sickness happens, but it doesn't have to ruin their entire experience of life. The point isn't to make things like sickness, loss, or changes disappear from your life. It's not about saying, I'll only feel okay if I never get sick, if no one ever leaves me, if everything is always under my control. That mindset keeps you trapped. Think about control for a minute. How often do you feel like you need to have control over things? Most of us have some control issues. It's just a matter of how intense those issues are. It's natural to want things to go the way you want them to, right? We try to keep everything in line so that things stay comfortable. But wouldn't it be amazing if you didn't need to control everything to feel okay? Imagine if you knew deep down that you'll be just fine, no matter what happens. This doesn't mean you stop interacting with the world. It just means you interact from a place of openness and enjoyment, not fear. You get involved because it's part of living fully, not because you're scrambling to keep things under control. That kind of life is possible for every one of us. It's not something only for saints or enlightened people who meditate all day. It's simply about looking at your fears honestly and understanding why they're there. So why are we so afraid? It's because we've built up an idea of ourselves, an ego, that's super sensitive. This fragile ego needs everything to go exactly the way we want, or we feel threatened. If someone we love doesn't respond exactly how we hoped, we might feel rejected. Say you tell someone, "I love you so much. I've never loved anyone like this." And instead of responding perfectly, they just casually say, "Yeah, love you too." That tiny difference can send you spiraling. Why? Because this sense of self is built on fear, and it's so thin that even the smallest misstep shakes it. For you to feel love, inspiration, and connection, you have to be open. But for a lot of us, we only open up if everything around us is just right. The moment things go slightly off, we close down. Imagine going out to lunch and finding that the food isn't hot enough, or that the portion is too small, or maybe a bug runs across the table. In an instant, your whole lunch is ruined. Or maybe the waiter serves you from the left instead of the right. It's such a small thing, but it's enough to make you feel like the experience is spoiled. Why is it all so sensitive? It's because underneath, you're scared. So you build all these ideas, opinions, preferences, and expectations to shield yourself from anything that might cause you discomfort or fear. You think, if things just go my way, I'll feel okay. But the truth is, life never stays exactly the way you want it, and it's unrealistic to expect that. Once in a while, yes, everything might fall into place, but it won't last. And when things fall apart, we tend to think, why did this have to happen to me? What did I do wrong? The answer is, you didn't do anything wrong. It just happened because life involves many factors beyond your control. This is the reality of life. And the sooner we understand that we can handle it without needing to control every little piece, the sooner we can relax and actually enjoy what's in front of us. It's about learning to be comfortable with things as they are, instead of living in fear and always trying to control everything. So, you have blonde hair. How'd that happen? Well, maybe it's from your grandparents, genetics, the right combination of DNA, or maybe even hair dye. Whatever it is, right? There are millions of factors that go into why things are the way they are, and it's not just one simple reason. Every single moment we experience is the result of all past events coming together to create that exact moment. That's why it rains. That's why there's a hurricane. That's why someone says something a certain way. Everything happens for a reason, and that reason is often a combination of things going back much further than we realize. But what do we often do? We take it personally. We get upset and ask, why did this happen to me? Or why did they say that to me? This way of thinking ignores the bigger picture, the whole field of psychology and even science. Psychology tells us that each person is the sum of their life experiences, the things they've learned, and what they've been through. So when someone says something to you, they're really expressing a mix of all their experiences, everything that's shaped them up to that point. It's not just about you. It's about their whole life and all they've been through. Imagine someone says something that hurts or offends you. Instead of asking, how could they say that? It might help to realize that they said it because of their experiences, not yours. They've been through things that led them to see the world a certain way, just like you've been through things that shaped how you see the world. You don't have the same background or experiences, so you may not understand each other's reactions. But that doesn't make one of you right and the other wrong. Everyone thinks that their perspective is correct because it feels logical to them based on their experiences. But if you had gone through their experiences, you might see things the way they do. Our thoughts, opinions, and reactions are all shaped by our life stories. If you'd grown up with different people, faced different challenges, or seen the world differently, you'd think differently too. Let's say you always dreamed of the perfect marriage, and then it turned out to be full of conflict and struggle. That reality can be jarring, but it's a reminder that no one's story follows a perfect path just because they hoped it would. Every person's life is unique, and every interaction comes from a blend of their experiences. No one in history will have exactly the same life as anyone else, and so they will never react the same way. This is why life doesn't go exactly how we want it to. It's because it's not supposed to. The world is filled with billions of people, each shaped by their own journey. So when things don't go as planned, or someone doesn't act the way you hoped, remember, it's not personal. It's just a reflection of their life story, not yours. Understanding this can help you let go of expectations and see life with a more open, accepting mindset. What I want to explain is how the moment right in front of you works. It's not about all the things you've experienced or where you came from. It's just a moment. And it's shaped by everything that happened before it. Think of it like physics or chemistry. It's a product of events in time and space that led up to this exact moment. Just like your thoughts come from all the things you've experienced, each moment in the world comes from its own experiences, right? For example, why does a hurricane happen? It's not random. There are reasons. The ocean warmed up, certain weather patterns formed, and so on. A meteorologist could explain every step of how it happened. But if you ask, why do we have to have hurricanes? That's ignoring reality. The moment you're in is a product of its own history, just like your mind is a product of your history. The problem is, these two things don't always match up, and that's where fear comes in. You realize you can't fully control what's happening around you or even inside your own head, though you like to think you can. Take relationships, for instance. You meet someone, date for a while, and think, this is great. I know this person. But think about it. They're 32 years old with their own lifetime of experiences that you know nothing about. You're seeing a version of them that they show because of how they feel around you. But there's so much more beneath the surface. Have you ever realized someone isn't who you thought they were? Is that their fault or yours? You can't truly know anyone completely. Over time, you start to understand that fear's driving so much of this, trying to control everything around you so you don't feel scared. And here's a funny example. When people analyze body language, why are they so focused on it? Because they're afraid, trying to figure out if someone's being honest or what they're really thinking. But why does it even matter? You're feeling scared, and you want to protect yourself from getting hurt. Do you think knowing the future would help? Imagine if you knew a car accident would happen years from now. Would you want to spend every day worrying about it until it happened? A wise person isn't interested in the future that way. They'd rather deal with things as they come, without being weighed down by fear of what might happen. If something bad happens, they handle it when it arrives. I'm not saying we shouldn't be cautious or make smart choices. Of course, I try to drive safely and make thoughtful decisions. But I'm not going to sit around imagining all the bad things that could happen and let that stop me from enjoying my life. What if someone told you, your marriage will only last 2.5 years, and then it will end in a painful divorce? Would you want to live with that worry? Probably not. You'd want to enjoy the relationship and let things unfold naturally. Trying to control everything by knowing the future only limits us and makes us feel trapped. You see, the desire to know the future is really just a desire for control. But when you grow spiritually, you'll see that trying to control everything is unnecessary. Life has ups and downs. It rains. It's sunny. People are kind. People have bad days. I accept these things as they come. I can be there for others and support them without taking things personally. You don't have to act a certain way for me to care about you. I'll be here as I am, and you can be yourself too. If you get to a place where you're not constantly afraid, you'll find a new kind of peace. Imagine realizing that life doesn't need to be spent running from fear. You can actually live freely, without trying to create only safe or good moments. Instead of constantly seeking a sense of security, or waiting for love or happiness to feel just right, you can decide to face your fears. How do you get there? It starts by recognizing that fear doesn't have to control your life. Many people have different ways to help you work through it. But the important thing is knowing that you can rise above fear. You don't have to let it run your life. By facing your fears, you can move beyond them and live in a way that's not just about avoiding bad things, but actually experiencing life. To be clear, living this way doesn't mean you don't go to work, or get married, or have children, or earn money. It doesn't mean you avoid those things or ignore your responsibilities. Instead, it means that your reason for living isn't focused on seeking security or needing things to make you happy. Instead, you live to express yourself, to be inspired, to be creative. You're not always searching for something to make you feel excited or passionate. You're already living with excitement and passion in everything you do. The goal is to live your life from a place of fullness, to give and help others, because it brings you joy, not because you need anything in return. When you're no longer afraid of life, you don't have to seek reassurance. You're okay with whatever happens. You're simply there, open to whatever life brings. And you don't take it all so personally. That's true freedom. This idea is deeply rooted in spiritual teachings, like those in the Bhagavad Gita. In the story, Arjuna asks Krishna, "How will I know if someone has reached this higher state of being? How can I recognize them?" Krishna's answer is beautiful. He explains that a wise person won't look or act obviously different. They will go through life's ups and downs with a calmness and acceptance. They're not overly excited by happiness or devastated by sorrow. They accept good and bad moments equally, letting them come and go without being unsettled. Such a person is like the ocean. Rivers flow into it, but it never overflows. Similarly, life flows into this person, and they stay at peace, serene and content. This doesn't mean they avoid life. They still work, connect with others, and live fully. But they don't let the changing world shake them. They are okay, not because they're powerful, but because they don't cling to anything. Life flows through them, and they are always at peace. Reaching this state takes practice. It's about handling what life brings, not running from it or being afraid of it. The core of spirituality is learning to handle your experiences calmly. If you know you can handle whatever comes, then you don't need to be afraid. You can go about your life, doing your best without needing to worry about every challenge or difficulty. And that's the beauty of it. Living fully, free from fear, in a way that allows you to face anything with peace. How do you learn to handle things? By practicing. That's what I teach you. Practice handling everyday things. Do you need to start with huge life-changing events? Like if your wife leaves you or your child dies? No, don't start there. Those things might happen someday. And when they do, you'll be better prepared. It's like if you want to play tennis, but you're just starting out. You wouldn't ask me how to play against the Williams sisters, right? You can't do that yet. But you can practice and get better at tennis over time. Handling life is just the same. You have to learn and practice. What's the point? This is the most important lesson. Learning to handle reality. Otherwise, you'll spend your life avoiding it. If you really want to learn to handle reality, then start practicing. How? Stop complaining about the weather, for example. Complaining doesn't change it. Practicing handling things, big or small, will build your strength to face life. I do this all the time with the driver in front of me. Nice blinker, buddy. The speed limit's 55, not 40. But does it actually help? Has the driver ever heard me? So why do I do it? Because I can't handle it. Think of it like a cost-benefit analysis. The cost of getting upset is 100%, and the benefit is 0. Getting worked up because you hit 3 red lights in a row. Use those moments to practice. Every time you get annoyed over something you can't control, take it as practice to let it go. Do you let yourself get upset over things you can't change? Start practicing to let those things go. As you do, you'll get better at handling bigger things. Begin with little frustrations, like the weather or a slow driver. Soon, when your spouse comes home and slams the bedroom door without saying hello, you'll handle it calmly. You'll see it's just like a bad driver or a rainy day. They had a rough day. It doesn't have to bother you. You made it through that situation. If you start practicing with these small moments, you can change your entire life. It's simple. If you choose to let things bother you, you'll always feel bothered. The moment in front of you isn't bothering you. You're bothering yourself about the moment. Right? How can one person stay calm in the situation while someone else is stressed? It's because moments don't actually bother us. We're the ones who let them bother us. This applies to big things too. Say your spouse leaves you and leaves a note. You come home and see the letter. Maybe you've been unhappy for years but felt stuck in the relationship. Now there's a note saying it's over. Suddenly, you might even feel relieved. The moment itself isn't the problem. It's your inner state that decides how you feel about what happened. So, you start learning to work with yourself. You don't have to tackle huge things right away. Just start with the goal of being okay with everything. Imagine reaching a point where you're at peace with whatever happens. Then you're free to focus on helping others because you're not caught up in your own issues. How do you get there? Practice, practice, practice. Notice, every time you're getting worked up about things you can't change, things that don't really matter, then you work with yourself to let it go. How do you do that? You become a witness to your reactions. This means you observe yourself getting annoyed about things like the weather, traffic, or anything outside your control. Ask yourself, do I want to feel this way? What's the point of letting this bother me? Take traffic, for example. You're stuck, and no amount of complaining will change that. So why make yourself miserable? Instead, learn to work with yourself in that moment. Find ways to lift your mood or let things go. Now, if I get out in the sun, I think, I'm close enough to a star to feel its warmth. I joke that we don't get sunburned, we get star-burned. And that shift makes everything feel a little more special. You can apply this to anything. If you're stuck in traffic, you can stress yourself out. Or you can think, I can't go anywhere. Maybe I'll use this time to meditate, listen to music, or just relax. Find ways to lift yourself up in any situation. That's the idea. Sure, meditating is great. It's a wonderful practice, but you're not meditating all day. Some people say to me, "Why don't you teach meditation?" It's because plenty of others already do that. I want to teach you what to do when you're not meditating. Meditation is still good, but I want you to learn to lift yourself up in every moment of your life. Let's say you're walking and see a friend. "Hey Sally, how are you?" But she doesn't respond or even look your way. You feel hurt, wondering, "What did I do? Why is she ignoring me?" But then you realize she has earbuds in and didn't hear you. Meanwhile, your mind has spun into all sorts of reasons for why she didn't say hi. Instead, ask yourself, can I handle Sally not saying hello? After all, there are billions of people on this planet who also didn't say hi. You have the power to stop yourself from spiraling into frustration. This is true spirituality, learning to lift yourself in everyday moments. And like anything, the more you practice, the better you get. You may not become perfect, but you'll be better at it than if you hadn't practiced at all. If you keep practicing, you'll get better. Same goes for working with yourself. If you practice being okay with things, you'll get better at it. If you practice handling life as it comes, you'll improve, and soon you'll be able to handle bigger challenges. Eventually, you'll reach a place where you can say, "I'm okay. No matter what happens, I'll be fine." And why will you be fine? Because you decide to be. If you don't let something bother you, it won't. Treat it like a game. If something bothers you, let go of it like it's a challenge in a video game. Aim for the next level. Have fun with it. Have fun letting go. Have fun being positive and finding ways to stay calm. Instead of expecting everyone around you, your family, job, or health, to be perfect so you can be at peace, focus on managing yourself. This is the secret to peace. If you work on it, you can reach a point where you realize, "I'm okay." Here's the truth. All that worry, anxiety, and stress? It's just energy being wasted. How often do you stress about things that never even happen? Most worries don't come true, which means a lot of energy is spent for nothing. When you stop wasting energy on worry and anxiety, that energy becomes available for you to use in other uplifting ways. Instead of being held down by stress, that energy moves up, making you feel more alive and connected. This is called Shakti. It's the energy you feel when you're not bogged down by worry. When you trust you can handle things, that energy gets released naturally, helping you feel more powerful and at peace. Imagine feeling love so deep and powerful that you can't even keep your eyes open. It's just overwhelming. That feeling is called Shakti. It's pure, unconditional energy that rises up inside you for no specific reason. You're able to feel this because the energy isn't getting wasted or pulled down by things that don't matter. And the truth is, every one of us can experience this. When this energy flows up within you, you feel so much more alive and full of joy. It's like there's something beautiful inside you, beyond anything you could get from the outside world. At this point, you're feeling more love than you ever thought possible. Not just for yourself, but for others too. It's incredible. You feel full of spirit, energy, and light. But often, we waste this energy on things that keep us stuck in our own egos. We try so hard to hold on to things that we think will make us happy, instead of just letting go and being truly okay from within. When you let go of the things that keep you trapped, you realize you don't need anything else to be at peace. If you keep letting that energy flow, it becomes even stronger so much so that it can actually start to feel a little scary. It's a different kind of fear, though, like the fear that comes from change and transformation. It's what spiritual teachers mean when they talk about dying to be reborn. It's realizing that you're not just a person, you're part of something bigger, something divine. When you let go of your attachment to your body, mind, and emotions, your true spirit, the Shakti, your consciousness, can be completely free. This is the path that the great spiritual teachers took. They found their way to the essence of all things. They discovered that everything is connected, that everything is one consciousness. And that's how they came to understand. I am the universe. My Father and I are one. All this really comes down to recognizing how much of your raw energy gets lost to fear. We spend so much time trying to protect ourselves, control things, and worry about everything. But you don't need to do that. Instead, practice being okay with life just as it is. When you can do that, you start to experience real peace. Thank you for listening.